Welcome back to the Cyber Resilience Brief, a SafeBreach podcast. I'm Tova Dvorin, joined by my co-host Adrian Culley, as we continue our special October series for Cybersecurity Month 2025 on moving from awareness to active cybersecurity readiness. Last time, Adrian, we introduced breach and attack simulation, or BAS, as the essential bridge.
Hi, Tova, that's right. AAV within a BAS framework helps organisations prove their defences. But it's not enough to just run any test, you need to run the right tests. That's where our focus shifts today to Adversary Exposure Validation, AEV.
Yes, AEV, Adversarial Exposure Validation, for those who are not previously aware, is a term that Gartner coined in the past 12 to 18 months to encompass not only BAS, but also adjacent offensive cybersecurity fields like continuous automated red teaming or CART. So, Adrian, is this just an evolution or repackaging of traditional vulnerability management?
Far from it, that's a dangerous misconception, but sadly common. Consider traditional vulnerability management. We run scans, get a list of thousands of vulnerabilities, and then the security team is overwhelmed trying to patch everything. They don't know what's critical now.
So they're essentially playing whack-a-mole with every vulnerability, regardless on whether an adversary is actively exploiting it or if it even applies to their specific threat landscape.
Exactly. And the same applies to simply running generic attack simulations. You might test against an outdated attack or one that's completely irrelevant to your industry, or crucially, one that isn't being used by the specific threat actors who are targeting you now. It's a waste of resources and creates a false sense of security.
So why have we seen more confusion in the market in terms of vulnerability management? Why do we see some players in the AEV fields trying to conflate the two, in your opinion?
So, very quickly, and something we've covered elsewhere, but vulnerability management is easy. It's the politician's fallacy. Here's a problem, something should be done. I'm doing something, therefore something's being done about the problem. That's actually a logical non sequitur, and people fall into that trap with vulnerability management. There's vulnerabilities, there's CVEs. I'm doing vulnerability management, therefore I'm dealing with the problem, and it's not. What exposure validation, adversary exposure validation is about is identifying, prioritizing your organization's exposures based on active real world adversary behaviors, tactics, and campaigns. It answers the question, given the threats currently targeting my industry, my geography, or my specific tech stack, what are my greatest weaknesses?
Right, and this falls within the larger Gartner framework as well of continuous threat exposure management, right? Which is all about not only having a up-to-date security posture, but making sure that it aligns with your business goals, with your industry, with your geography, and all the other surrounding factors. So, in other words, instead of a generic list of vulnerabilities, you get a targeted list of exposures to actual threats. How does AAV acquire real-time threat intelligence so that it makes it actionable?
So, fabulous question, Tova. The SafeBreach platform and other AV platforms, we do something very interesting with cyber threat intelligence CTI feeds. People are used, if they've not been exposed to AEV and BAS and CART, to using those feeds for IOCs and TTPs for their defensive controls. What we do is we take our state of the art bleeding edge attack library, we take the threat intelligence feed, and we allow you to create an attack based on that up to the moment threat intelligence in seconds that can then be simulated against your assets. This includes information on emerging TTPs from nation state actors, financially motivated cybercrime groups, and even industry specific groups. We map these observed adversary behaviors to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, then to the SafeBreach attack code, and give you the attack code in seconds.
And then you could run that code immediately on your systems and see whether you're protected and schedule further scans. Is that right?
And that's where we get to one of the levels of continuous Tova. Uh, and we track the drift. We must keep going, and we're so far away, a million miles away from legacy point in time penetration testing.
That sounds incredibly powerful for prioritization, not just from a threat intelligence standpoint, but for testing any vulnerability on your systems. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, you focus on what truly matters first so you mitigate the most imminent threats, both in terms of urgency and importance.
That's the core value. A good AEV program allows security teams to move from a reactive, overwhelmed state to a proactive, strategic one. It focuses their limited resources, time, budget, people, on the exposures that carry the highest risk right now. Risk-driven approach.
Could you give us a concrete example of how AEV might uncover an exposure that traditional methods would miss?
Certainly. Imagine a new zero-day exploit emerges targeting a specific piece of widely used software. Traditional vulnerability scans might take days or even weeks or months to get an updated signature. AEV, by contrast, ingests the intelligence on the behavior of the exploit, how it establishes persistence, what network protocols it uses for command and control, and immediately simulates those behaviors against your controls.
So even if the specific patch isn't out yet, you can validate if your existing EDR or network controls would detect or prevent the actions of that 0 day.
Exactly. It's about validating your layers of defense, not just waiting for a patch. Patch and proceed is dead. It's a necessary step, but it's not going to help you. It lets you know if you have effective compensating controls in place against novel threats. And this leads directly into our next concept, moving from validation at a specific point in time to validation all the time.
But real quick before we get into that, what would you say though to other AEV vendors who claim that because they have a CVE based BAS or AEV system, they are covering all of the boxes, even if they're not addressing the identity portion?
That's highly misleading because there's a thing called traffic light protocol. Traffic light protocol is put together by the Hacker Mudge, a congressional committee about 25 years ago. And it's a gentleman's agreement between intelligence agencies and vendors about what is not released, and it helps government offensive cybersecurity not lose their edge or their advantage. Now, because of that, and for good reason, just because something has a CVE released, in a significant amount of situations, and I'm talking about 80% plus, the actual attack code is never released. It's covered by traffic light protocol, and it is either amber or red. So anybody in the game of vulnerability management, they've only ever got part of the picture, which is the vendor provided patch. For 80% of what they're trying to deal with, they have no idea what the exploit is, and that's a huge exposure.
Thank you. Thank you for filling us in on that and debunking that misconception. So let's go back to your original point about having validation all the time. That sounds like a big leap from even the Gartner AEV targeted approach. That's something else.
It is, and it's the next logical step in building true cyber resilience. Our evergreen theme, Tova. We know adversaries don't rest. They're constantly evolving their TTPs. New vulnerabilities are discovered daily. Your internal environment is constantly changing with new deployments, configurations, and user activity. A single AI AEV campaign, while focused, is still a point in time exercise.
So you're saying that security can degrade between AEV campaigns.
Precisely. We need a way to ensure that our security posture remains robust, not just today or next week, but continuously. Remember, your security posture is not static, it is dynamic. And that's what we'll tackle in our next episode when we discuss continuous automated red teaming, or CART.
Great. Looking forward. Thank you, Adrian, for shedding light on adversary exposure validation. Join us next time for episode 3 of our special 4-part series, where we delve into Beyond the Drill, the power of continuous automated red teaming. The Cyber Resilience Brief is a SafeBreach podcast, executive produced by Tova Dvorin and Adrian Culley. Sound provided by Adobe Music. Editing done with Adobe Podcasts. Distribution and tracking provided by Podbean. If you enjoy the podcast and like to learn more, please check us out at www.safebreach.com. SafeBreach.com. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.